Hello, Super Nerd friends. It's Saturday. I almost forgot it was my day. Just sort of woke up and someone on my Twitter feed was talking about Korra and it made me think, oh, it's Saturday again. Because I don't know if I mentioned this before, but because internet's really bad, I just kind of watch everyone's videos in a row on Saturday before I make my vid. Which is kind of nice because then everything's, fresh in the mind. So, the last thing I'm going to say about horses, at least, for a while anyway, is yesterday, I completed the main storyline on Skyrim, the Dark Brotherhood one, and the Civil War, and not much else. That was my busy day. But I had Shadowmere for a lot of it. Becky probably doesn't know, but the demonic demon horse, yeah. I just said that. That is unkillable, basically, and the way one of the characters describes the horse, like when you get it, is that the horse is one of us, and you're assassins, so the horse is kind of like this whirlwind of murder doom. It's kind of awesome. So basically, Shadowmere helped a lot with the Civil War effort. That's basically what I'm trying to say, because I would ride Shadowmere up to the gates of whatever place that we were storming, and get off the horse, and then the horse would run forward and eat every third person, which is pretty cool, watching a computer horse eat people. Not really, but, kind of, basically. Also moving on to the trolley problem, which I have known before as the train problem. I'm really curious where, Alexis, you heard this, because I don't think you've ever heard of it before in your life, and I've never heard of it before in my life. And then I heard about it a week ago, and then you learned about it this week, and I don't know, it's weird, it's making the rounds or something. Okay, well, I don't know, I don't think I'm ever going to be able to unlearn it as the trolley problem, or think of it as a trolley problem, just because I think of trolleys as kind of cheerful, boxy tourist things that go 7 miles an hour, and if you're run over by a trolley, you probably deserved it, in some secret way, because you're tourist, probably. That's really mean. I'm sorry. So, one of the interesting things about the trolley/train/machine on tracks problem is that, Harvard did a study on this, and somewhere upwards of 90% of people chose to save the 5 people instead of the 1. So if you chose the 5 people, relax, you are completely normal, according to Harvard, so who knows, but when there's no personal involvement, all you're doing is pulling a lever, it's really easy for your brain to do the math, which is basically that 1 death is better than 5. So, the other interesting thing, at least to me, is how, Becky, definitely, Alexis a little bit, and definitely Alexis's mom, you're trying to rationalize it like crazy. Because even though your brain has already done the calculations and your prefrontal lobe is like, well, 1 is better than 5, so we're going to go with that. You're still trying to make sure that there's no possible way that this can be a bad decision. Which is really, you're trying to find a way to cut the wire, as Tony Stark would say. Alexis might get that reference. So I've heard of this, the people I heard this from were evolutionary neurobiologists, and they had a second part of the experiment, the scenario, which is interesting, and I will pose that to you now. And it is, okay, so it's basically the same thing. The equation's still the same. Either 1 person dies or 5 people die. And they're still walking on the tracks, and you still have a chance to save someone, or maybe 5 people. But this time there's no lever, and assuming you pick to save the 5 people, and you want to get rid of the 1 person, not get rid of, but you know what I mean. You have to shove him onto the tracks. And that's the only way to save the 5 people. Does your decision change? And most people's do, because it's no longer as impersonable as pushing a button or throwing a lever. There's no way now to deny that you are not explicitly involved in his death. So most people start changing their minds, although it is a little bit hard because the other option is doing nothing, which would mean that 5 people die just automatically. Because that's what happens. If you choose to do nothing, then 5 people will die by default, which is kind of the hard thing. Although, there's a third option, which most people don't think of, which isn't their fault, I don't think, because it usually isn't offered as an option. But Alexis, you can tell your mom this. There is a way to save 5 people, not 5 people, 6 people. There's a way to save 6 people and still keep the equation balanced. Is that instead of shoving the person on the tracks or pulling the lever, you can throw yourself onto the tracks. So, there is that way. But I totally agree with Alexis that it makes me wish that I had taken different classes in college, or at least ones to do with ethics or morality, but also economics in a weird way, which I'm kind of getting to. But it reminded me the personable aspect of this that sort of changes everything, because on a rational level, nothing changes between pulling the lever or pushing the man in front of the train/trolley. But your brain knows something has changed, sort of instinctively, because, we're a social species. Anything to do with interacting with other people makes things more complicated. But another example that I've heard about, a sort of interesting thought experiment, has to do with money and also involves how things change when things are face-to-face and you actually have to deal with people versus pulling the lever, essentially. But in this one, you're at a party or something, and you're standing in a room with at least one other person, 2 other people, and someone comes up and offers you $100. But there's a twist. You have to split this $100 in any way you want to, with another person, the person who's standing there with you. So you can give them all 100, well, I don't think so. You have to keep some money for yourself. So you can give them 99, you can give them 50, you can give them $1. So any amount, but there's another catch. Not the twist, but the catch. Which is, if they don't accept the money that you gave them, if they're not happy with that amount, then they can decline the offer and then neither of you gets money. So what's cool is that I've heard this scenario given by the evolutionary neurobiologists and also by economists, and they both have very different takes on it initially. And it is, while I'm talking, ponder to yourself, how much money would you give to the other person? But the economists are like, well, the rational thing to do would be to give the other person $1, like the very least amount that you possibly can get away with. Because it makes sense, you get to keep all the money, and the other person gets at least $1, and, $1 is better than nothing, right? But, as it turns out, that isn't really how it works, because other things are coming into play than just money, which is where the neurobiologists come in. And, most people generally give about 50-50. They're actually surprisingly fair. And to the neurobiologists, that makes sense, because there's a chance that you might see these people again out in the world, and your brain tells you, well, if I do a nice thing for them, then maybe they'll do a nice thing for me. So you're generally pretty fair. But the economists, when they come back into it, they're like, well, I guess that actually makes sense, because there's a danger in giving the other person too little money, which is that they could reject the offer, and then no one gets money. But people aren't insanely rational all the time, especially when it comes to money, and here comes in our friend the Udel. There's a possibility if you give them $1 that the Udels they gain by rejecting the offer entirely won't match up to the Udels they gain by just keeping the money. So I think I got that right. So basically, it's more enjoyable to deprive the person who cheated them out of money than it is to keep the dollar. So that's why people are generally pretty fair, I think. So somewhere in the back of their mind, they kind of know if they only got $1 and someone gypped them, they'd be like, nope, no one's keeping the money. But another way the personal comes into the example is, so say you got $50 out of the deal, whether you were the person who was giving or receiving. So the person who gave you the money comes up, and they say, you have to split the money again. But this time, the person you're splitting it with isn't in the room. They're just someone out in the world, and they don't have a chance to reject the offer. Does the amount you give change? And usually it does. People generally give much less money when the person they're dealing with isn't in the room and don't have a chance to decline the offer. So there comes the personal in again. So it isn't as simple as pressing a lever or, just giving money. It depends more intrinsically on how involved we are in the situation or how much people can watch us doing it. Because imagine the train situation. does your decision change if there are people watching you or if you're alone? Would you be willing to shove someone in front of a train? I mean, if you are willing to take that option, would you be willing to do if there were people watching? What if there were, like, family members there? Or people, you know, from your job or something? But I just find it interesting how people's decisions change versus, I don't know, just like the social aspect of it, I guess, and how hardwired we are to think in certain ways, which is evidenced by the fact that, like, 90, I think it was actually higher than 90, but somewhere around 90% of people chose to save the 5 people instead of the 1. And then most people changed or start having second thoughts at the very least when it comes to shoving someone in front of a train instead of just pulling a lever. But, I think I brought up basically everything I wanted to talk about. I haven't started a new book yet. Although I do have it downloaded, I think it's actually one I have a Kindle version of, so I just need to put on my Kindle and start reading. No word yet from the libraries, though I guess they had quite a large number of applicants. Yeah. And they're really big on no favoritism, so they, like, if you go up to the desk and ask, like, how's the job thing going, and have you picked anyone yet? They'll be like, oh, we can't tell you how it's going, that could be showing favoritism. So, I don't know, I think after a while I'm just gonna have to call them and, you know, do the follow-up call that you're supposed to do to make sure they know you're serious. But, I think that's about it. Kind of a lazy Saturday today. Not much going on. And with that, I bid you good day and good weekend. I look forward especially to Becky's big life-altering surprise. I can't even imagine what it is. Although I want to guess it's something school or job-related, but I don't want to actually guess and then look foolish when it's like, we got a pug or something. So, or maybe that was it and I just made a fool of myself. But, with that, I actually bid you good day. Have a good weekend. Miss you all lots. Bye.